Okay, we are live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have a very special guest. He comes to us all the way from the great nation of South Africa. His name is Norman, and he was introduced to me by Hans Schantz, or Aetherzar on Substack. And we were talking the pre-show. I have to start recording just right at 10 because some of the pre-show talks are really interesting. I've done shows about South Africa. Actually, one of my earliest shows was recorded about expropriation without compensation. It was something that was a part of the Constitution, the new Constitution that was formed in South Africa, where people would have to be paid money if stuff was taken by the government or something kind of something like in the West, which is, I can't remember the Latin word, but basically it's changed recently that they're going to expropriate without not compensate, which is really unconstitutional. But it's really wild what's happening in South Africa. But today we're going to talk, Norman and I are going to talk about 9/11 revisionism. We tried to do it a couple days ago. Some of the formatting didn't work. If you're watching this on Rumble, X, or Rockfin, you will see his Substack. I will put a link to his Substack. You can also reach out to him on X, which I will put a link to his social media there as well. But his Substack is 911revision.substack.com. And we're going to show a bunch of videos and kind of have a multimedia presentation with some pictures as well. So he's going to do most of the talking. I'm going to do the technical aspects. So if there's a delay in some of these videos, it's my fault, but I will do my best to kind of operate as a co-host with Norman. So Norman, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
Awesome. So for people who may not have heard your name or heard of 9/11 Revision, maybe you can talk about your background, how you got interested in 9/11, how you started writing about it, and then we can get to the presentation.
Certainly will do. Basically, I was 23 when 9/11 happened. Obviously, we all saw exactly the same thing. A lot of us thought that, this is impossible. How could this happen? And got to the point of thinking, okay, fine, this is now the start of World War III. This is the end of it. America is going to bomb the smithereens out of the whole world. And then seeing that we're in South Africa doesn't really affect us that much. So I kind of like forgot about it. And then 2005, 2006, with YouTube coming online and people start making their videos and everything, then I got into this conspiracy-tainment, if you can call it that, because everybody likes a nice conspiracy. And then you had things like September Clues, Loose Chains, In Plain Sight, all these interesting documentaries that came out pointing the finger to some of the holes in the official narrative, and then also coming up with very strange and wonderful theories. And eventually I got around to seeing Richard Gage on YouTube videos, where he was basically making the case where you had these cardboard cutouts were showing that you can't have this top of this building fall straight through to the ground in free fall speed. So obviously something must have gotten rid of the rest of the building. Bought in, that made sense. Then they started with these thermite experiments that looked feasible. And later on, I came across the nuke proponents, thinking that there was a nuke buried underneath the towers, and that is what took it down. That didn't really make sense, because that would have been a huge explosion, and the whole of Manhattan would have shaken if something like that would have happened. And then later on, in about 2012, I saw a presentation held in the Netherlands at the Breakthrough Energy Conference. And the lady that was giving the presentation was talking about a whole bunch of other anomalies that nobody was talking about. Architects and engineers, they were talking about the two towers and building 7. But this lady was talking about buildings 3, 4, 5, 6 and the Bankers Trust. So, and a bunch of other anomalies. Then, that was around about 2012. Then your life just keeps on going. And by 2019, 2020, when COVID hit, we all had a bunch of extra time. We all started going online a lot more, going onto Telegram, going into groups and seeing what the drama is with a COVID narrative. And that's when our local podcaster, or Joe Rogan of South Africa, if you can call him that, Jeremy Nell, who runs Germ Warfare, he asked, we were debating various things in his Telegram group, and he later on asked me to write like a couple of articles on 9/11, and that's how the 9/11 aspect took hold of me again. And in 2020, I went into various Facebook chat groups and debated people and all of that. And I then saw that I need to hone my skills and know a little bit more about what I'm trying to bring to a debate or a conversation. And I basically then started revisiting all the narratives. By that time, you had 20 years worth of um, to and fro between all the academics, just like you had in the COVID sphere and the health truth movement that you've got now. And um, I then just decided, and the main thing that was the main catalyst was for the 21st anniversary, where there was interviews held with university students in America. And it was scary to see how little they knew about one of the biggest attacks on US soil. And that basically got me into thinking, hell, we've got to write about this, because everybody that I talk with who aren't American seems to have a better grip on what happened on 9/11. And there was a lot of writing about all the bluff around it, the insider trading, um, the the what the various people that were whistleblowers that were kept quiet and all of that, but nobody really looked at what happened to the buildings, because that's something that is very, very, very important, because we've never seen anything like that. And even if you want to say it's a controlled demolition using thermal or kinetic mechanisms, um, that still doesn't fit, because there's a lot of information out there that people have never heard or never looked at, because straw man arguments gets used to shut down conversations about the evidence. And that's pretty much what my presentation is going to be about. It's pretty much showing you it wasn't a collapse, why it can't be a controlled demolition, and then also pointing out all the various anomalies that cannot be explained by thermal or kinetic mechanisms. And that's where the key lies. The smoking gun, as a matter of fact, is everything except buildings 1, 2, and building 7. You've got to look at 3, 4, 5, 6, and the Bankers Trust. So
And you
that's pretty
mentioned
much me.
gotcha. You said you went. Somebody talked about it in 2012. Was that Judy Wood or was that somebody
That is,
else?
yes, that is
Judy Wood.
Dr.
Okay.
Wood, and she's a structural engineer. She's a forensic scientist. She did her own independent forensic investigation. She went to court with her evidence, but she was blacklisted and cancelled by the 9/11 Truth Movement.
Right. So, like, she was kind of elbowed out. They didn't really
Yes,
bring her. I remember that very well. I
yeah,
mean, for a lot of people who don't know, my first book, when I self-published it in 2010, I was really an independent. I wasn't public, but it all came out of my research into 9/11 when I figured it out. Like 2 years later, 2003, things didn't make sense. I believe the cover story in 2001 for sure,
yeah.
but
I initially did as well, but then, and that's something that I don't know if you know the work of Professor David A. Hughes
I've had him on my show
out of
twice,
the
so
UK.
I'm very
Yeah.
familiar with him. Yeah.
Yeah, with his level, his group 1, group 2, group 3, where group 1 is the normies who believe the government narrative, and then we all fall into the second group of stating that there's something wrong. But that group is so big, and there's so many state actors and COINTELPRO agents in there leading us astray, that make sure that we just stay there, and we then all of a sudden have an answer, and we don't go further looking into the various narratives. And that's where Dr. Wood is. Dr. Wood is in level 3, because she's, and yeah, and that's the thing. And people need to realize, just because You've got an Alex Jones or a Joe Rogan or somebody like that giving you certain information. That doesn't mean it's the begin all and end all. You've got to do a little bit of your own research and get out of that mindset of conspiracy-tainment.
Right. And there is that. There is conspiracy-tainment, and most of these social movements, including 9/11, all are infiltrated by state
Yeah,
actors to a certain, and some are witting, clearly are assets. And some of these hosts are either manipulated. You don't know what's going on behind the scenes. You
yeah.
don't know
No,
who gets paid, who's clever. I've noticed some of the, I mean, that's a whole nother show, but like Americans are being propagandized from all angles.
all spheres. And the main thing is the quickest way that you can tell is if you go to a talking head and you point out things that they're not talking about and they don't want to change their mind, or they just keep on going with their normal stuff when you know that they are wrong and you can prove that they are wrong. And that is something that I did in 2023 when I basically went into Zoom calls with some of these 9/11 talking heads, asked them questions, and they floundered beautifully. And I've got all of that on on video that I've saved. And some of them actually went into points where they then, from 2024, they stopped having live Zoom calls with questions and answers.
Interesting, yeah. You can really, I mean, if you do your work, some of these people will, they kind of come out from the camouflage. You can tell they're
Yeah,
state act. There's all Epstein is full of these people promoting Epstein or
yeah.
curtailing it or manipulating or say there's nothing there. Almost all of them who say there's nothing there are either idiots or they're propagandists, black
Yeah, but
propagandists.
that's what I can't understand, because these Cash Patel and all these guys were talking about how they're going to release it, and now all of a sudden, no, there's no list.
Yeah,
it
no,
is
they
it is
slowly change.
absolutely
Yeah.
hilarious.
It's you can find them all. It's all history that can be replayed. Like I'm replaying it on my social media. They're
Yeah.
obviously lying. They're either manipulated or they were never going to show it. I mean, and I think that it might be worth too much, but I mean, there's like reams of material, and some of
Yeah,
the
but it's
talking heads. I mean, you can see these people saying it's not important, just like Ben Shapiro and some of these other guys. I mean, they're so obvious to me. Like, how can anybody who's an American patriot listen to these people or not like want to throw rotten garbage at them? Like, they're such
yeah,
obvious liars. And
yeah.
for people who don't know, blackmail is warfare. It's a form
Oh
of
yes,
warfare. They're at warfare with our political system. So whoever's
yeah,
blackmailing,
definitely.
whether it's from the inside or outside of the Mossad or
Yeah,
Netanyahu, whoever's doing it, you're getting your money taken away, and you're not going to have decisions that affect you. So that's why the whole system's going down, is partially because of this blackmail.
but I also think that this whole aspect that people want to say, oh, it's the Jews, it's these. I think the people who are actually running the show or whatever are people with no fixed address. They've got no national pride or anything like that. They are just the guys running the world, and people are so easily entertained by just pointing a finger at them or them or them without knowing that those are just the front guys that you are supposed to know about and cackle about or
Why
whatever.
wouldn't the
So
military industrial complex want these people blackmailed, right? Because they
no,
want their money to go through, or somebody from whatever interest group you want
yeah,
to blackmail everybody.
yep,
And blackmail is the currency in DC. There's just absolutely, and it goes back very far, way before even Epstein was born. So it's kind of
yeah.
it's silly to think that
I
this,
think that's even before the First World War, and
yeah,
all those guys are still in charge, and it's
yeah. But blackmail
passed
is
on through the
and
ages.
getting information. I mean, it's incredible. Like, I'm not even that important of a person, but I've had my whole, I mean, I'm 56. People went back to my freaking high school like 45 years ago trying to find stuff on me.
Jeez,
They emptied out my FBI file. I know for a fact that my government that I pay taxes to compiled information on me and then flipped it upside down into the public. I'm still
crazy.
clean. I'm still clean, even after all the FBI stuff was released. So they can all these Fed crooks and stuff like that. I mean, wait
Yeah,
till it happens to you. You'll just be like shocked, like wow.
yeah,
So they hate the truth. That's really it. I'm just
yeah.
trying to tell the truth. I don't really have. I'm not even
No,
affiliated
definitely
with
here
any
for
part
me as
party.
well. Yeah, Okay, so let's quickly jump into this. It might in the beginning it might be a little bit boring for certain people, but we've got to
Let's lay a
approach this
foundation, as they say.
with a foundation, and this is why we're going to start with this Bangkok skyscraper that everybody knows about a couple of months ago with a 7.7 seismic reading with that earthquake, and this is what a building collapse looks like.
Straight down.
Straight down.
And a large dust thing at the very bottom.
Just like we saw on 9/11, yes.
Let's see
But if we go to the first picture,
yeah, let's do that. You there?
now that is what a pancake collapse looks like. You can physically see the various floors. If there were people in that building, the people would have been wedged in between those floors, and they would pretty much still be intact and not in brittle, small little microscopic pieces, or have small little bone fragments or whatever. So
Right,
then
so
we
that's
can
like
go to
3 stories tall. 3 stories tall of like
a little bit more than that. The average height for a conventional controlled demolition or something like that is usually around about 12.5% of the original building height.
Gotcha.
So, and that was, I think, a 29-story building.
Understood. Okay, do you want to go to the next video?
Yes, so that we can see what a conventional controlled demolition looks like in relation to what we saw on the video.
Are you hearing that audio, Norman?
Yes. So there's 2 important things to notice here. Once that controlled demolition happens and the building drops down, look at where the dust cloud goes. Everything falls down to the bottom. The dust cloud doesn't go higher than the original building height, and on 9/11 it was something completely different. So on the left, that is not a conventional controlled demolition using any kinetic or thermal mechanism. And then you also had on the right-hand side, you've got that little piece of a spire that was still standing, and that was around about 900 foot high, and eventually that basically just drops down vertically and basically disappears. And that underneath that spire is where 16 people survived in the North Tower, and a lot of people don't know about those survivors, and we'll cover them in a bit.
Gotcha. Next video.
Yes, the next one is basically on the structural integrity of the building. We need to show people, number one, that a plane can't basically bugger up the building and make it collapse, never mind the jet fuel. Anybody who still believes that narrative really needs to go do some homework. So this is important so that we can see the structure of the building, even if it was a controlled demolition, why it would be very difficult bringing down that building with conventional means.
On the same subject, the architectural firm of Roth & Sons wrote, "The building as designed is 16 times stiffer than a conventional structure. The Vierendeel trusses would be so effective, according to the engineer's calculations, that all the columns on one side of a tower could be cut, as well as the 2 corners and several columns on the adjacent sides, and the tower would still be strong enough to withstand a 100-mile-per-hour wind." John Skilling, the structural engineer who designed the Twin Towers, stated, "Live loads on these perimeter columns can be increased more than 2,000% before failure occurs." In particular, the Twin Towers were designed to sustain the impact of a large airliner traveling at 600 miles per hour and still remain standing. Interviewed in 1993 by the Seattle Times, John Skilling stated, "We looked at every possible thing we could think of that could happen to the buildings, even to the extent of an airplane hitting the side. Our analysis indicated the biggest problem would be the fact that all the fuel from the airplane would dump into the building. There would be a horrendous fire, a lot of people would be killed. The building structure would still be there." And it was. After the impacts, both towers remained standing, showing no major effect on their stability. Furthermore, NIST has confirmed that the initial jet fuel fires themselves lasted at most a few minutes. This means that from that moment on, the only available source of fuel for the fires was common office furnishings. And, as we know, regular office fires are not hot enough to affect the stability of a steel fire.
In over 20 years, I have not seen, until recently, a protected steel structure that has collapsed in a fire.
These kinds of designs have performed extraordinarily well over history. In fact, until this occurrence, no building had fallen down because of fire.
Furthermore, NIST estimated the combustible fuel loading was somewhat lower than found in prior surveys of office spaces. The number of interior walls, and thus the minimal amount of combustible interior finish and limited bookshelf space account for much of the differences. There was no reason for the towers to collapse at that point. With a structure that had clearly withstood the impacts and with less than average office content to feed the fires, both buildings should have remained standing, allowing for the evacuation and rescue of everyone who had survived the initial impacts and the fires. Instead, both buildings suddenly collapsed from top to bottom, one 56 minutes after the impact, the other as much as 1 hour and 42 minutes after the impact of the plane. Why?
And that is a very operative question. Why did that happen? It couldn't be fires. And if it was explosives, you would have heard massive, loud bangs going off. We also didn't hear that. And what people basically need to do is they've got to recalibrate their minds with regards to what we saw, because people were brainwashed in the first couple of days, because all you heard is collapse, 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 collapse. And that's when people's definition of what a collapse looks like was changed. And you can go look at any building collapse, any controlled demolition, and you won't find a similar looking building going down that looks like what we saw with the Twin Towers whatsoever. And this is where we go into the next video to help people realize that they've got to recalibrate their minds with when they look at the Twin Towers disintegrating.
Well, this one doesn't have video, but it has audio. Do you want to just listen to the audio?
Yes, it's a quick 2 minutes.
Turn to dust before they even reach the ground. You can actually see this happening. You can watch any of the videos from the news channels. They all show the same thing.
We thought we knew what we saw.
A plane hitting the building should not turn the buildings into dust.
We've got to start looking at this whole situation a lot differently than we have up until now.
We're talking here about 43,600 windows, 600,000 square feet of glass, 200,000 tons of structural steel, 5 million square feet of gypsum, 6 acres of marble, and 425,000 cubic yards of concrete, turned in good part into a cloud.
The 110-story tower disintegrated in just 10 seconds.
That's not a collapse. And it's not an explosion. It's a building frothing up into powder. Collapses don't do that.
The seismic recordings would have reflected 2 500,000-ton buildings slamming to the ground, but they did not. Didn't happen.
There's a cluster of core columns that remains here. Watch what happens to them. They just faint.
Here's Building 7, which is a 47-story building. It's like 650 feet tall, approximately. This has got to be over that.
It physically disintegrates in front of your eyes. Not concrete, but steel.
You can see all of this just frothing up into dust. And it's also blowing downward.
That's about 700 feet tall. If that thing tipped over, it would take out a few blocks worth of buildings. How's it going to go straight down? You got a 700-foot hole in the ground, drop it into?
All right, let's go to the next one.
Okay, so the voice there was Dr. Judy Wood. Now, the main thing is this is going to just introduce you to who she is, what she's done, and then you've got to ask yourself the question, if somebody with this amount of qualifications, why is she being cancelled or being ad hominems thrown at her? And yeah, it's
the full black bag suite of undermining somebody's testimony. I mean, they have
Correct.
CIA used to write documents on that as how to have like the full thing. It's not just
and the main thing
theorist.
And the main thing is when she filed a QTAM whistleblower case in 2007, it was only around about a month or so, 3 weeks to a month later, that architects and engineers for a 9/11 Truth website basically came up, and that's when the mudslinging towards her started. So we can play this.
Same thing happened in the JFK community. Like all these things, you see these when you study these enough, you see in whatever level of inquiry there's
basically 2 books that you need to read. I'll send you the links for it. It's written by Andrew Johnson. That was the other voice in the previous video, and he was run about her right hand man. He's from the UK, and he chronicled all the infighting and everything since the formation of the Scholars for 9/11 Truth in 2005. And there's 2 books that he wrote, 9/11 Holding the Truth and 9/11 Finding the Truth, where he basically talks about everybody in the 9/11 Truth sphere between 2005 and 2019 about, and that gives you a beautiful background in seeing what she's been up against. And all she wanted to do is just present evidence. And that's all she does. She doesn't go into who could have done it, where it was, or anything like that. She just presents a 500-page book full of irrefutable evidence, and nobody's been able to refute what's in that book. But they'll rather lambaste her and say space beams and all of these kind of stuff, which is completely unfounded. And that was actually coined by Stephen E. Jones, and we'll get into Stephen E. Jones later because he's a key figure being a government operative.
Interesting.
Dr. Judy D. Wood is a former professor of mechanical engineering with research interests in experimental stress analysis, structural mechanics, optical methods, deformation analysis, and the materials characterization of biomaterials and composite materials. She's a member of the Society for Experimental Mechanics, SEM, co-founded SEM's Biological Systems and Materials Division. She has served on the SEM Composite Materials Technical Division. She received her Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering in 1981 in Structural Engineering, her master's degree in Engineering Mechanics in Applied Physics in 1983, and her PhD in Materials Engineering Science in 1992. She has published more than 60 technical articles in various publications, in refereed journals, in conference proceedings, and edited monographs and special technical reports. She has conducted a comprehensive forensic investigation of what physically happened to the World Trade Center site on 9/11/2001. In 2007, she filed a federal case for science fraud against the contractors who contributed to the official National Institute of Standards and Technology, short NIST, report about the destruction of the World Trade Center towers. This case was filed in the U.S. Supreme Court in December 2009. Her book, titled Where Did the Towers Go?, is the only comprehensive forensic investigation on this topic in the public domain.
And this is the book.
Let's move this up.
And it's huge.
Can you put that up again, Norman? There you go. Where did the towers go? I'll see if I can find a
it's massive. And once you've read it, it's basically also a course in critical thinking at the end of the day. And again, why would architects and engineers not want to support a lady like that went to the U.S. Supreme Court and presented all her evidence when they went to NIST for correction? They never even mentioned molten metal or thermite in their request for correction to NIST, and those are the two main selling points that they try to bring across to people. So now this is where we're going to look at the amount of rubble that was left. Now, the controlled demolition proponents...
I just dropped off.
Can you still hear me?
It's me.
Oh.
Can you say something now?
Okay, can you hear me?
I tell you, man, something's going on with StreamYard. I'm in like an abusive relationship with StreamYard.
Let's see, maybe I pressed something.
Can you say something now? Nope, still not there. Let's see, let me see if I can do my mic settings. Say something now. No, it's definitely not me. I can see my mic moving. I can't see yours. So, let's see. Come back to the studio when I kick you out. Something's going on with this app. It's so strange. It's like crazy. Let's see this if this pops up. It's just not. It's not stable. That's really what it is. It's not stable at all. Norman, can you hear me? Check your mics. Make sure your mic settings are correct. Can you hear me? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay, so you hear me.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay, so this next section is basically going to talk about the rubble pile and what some of the firemen experienced whilst they were in the building. Now, something that you've got to keep in mind when you've got a building coming down, usually in a controlled demolition, the average expected rubble pile is 12.5%. Now, take 12.5% of a 110-story building. The expected rubble pile that you are supposed to see is 13.75 stories for each tower. Now, that we didn't see. Now, when people bring this up to the controlled demolition guys, they say, no, but everything was ejected laterally 600 feet in all directions. Now, have a look at this picture and you tell me whether or not you will be able to rebuild the buildings if we play pickup sticks. Because the amount of steel that was used to build the buildings, if you laid them end to end, you were supposed to have a 550-mile-long line of steel bars or columns end to end. And let's have a look at what happened when the buildings went away, how much rubble there was left.
Look at where the towers used to stand. There is surprisingly so little rubble.
Where did 110 stories go?
Those two little pimples where there's an arrow that points that people survived here.
And that's like right under the tower.
Mickey Cross feared they would all be dead before anyone found them.
I had no idea what was over us. I'm thinking 110 stories. How much rubble that is, if they start pulling it apart, how long would it take for them to get to us?
They assumed they were buried under such debris that they'd be dead by the time anyone found them.
But then the strangest thing happened. This beam of sunlight came right in on us.
After the dust settled, they looked up and saw blue sky.
I'm like amazed now. It's a 110-story building above us, and I'm looking up at the sun.
The descriptions they gave were not of a building falling on top of them, or not of bombs exploding around them. It wasn't high heat. They didn't get cooked. They didn't get squashed.
I looked up and said, guys, there used to be 106 floors above us, and now I'm seeing sunshine. There's nothing above us.
Real quick.
That big building doesn't exist.
Now, what you see in the background over there, that's the Plaza Liberty Sphere. That thing was 27 foot high, and that was in the middle of the plaza. Now, you had 210-story buildings next to it, and it wasn't buried underneath any rubble. Where did the buildings go?
Right. It's right there. Yeah. Also featured in Fight Club 1999. Very strange.
Yeah.
These are the biggest office buildings in the world, and I didn't see one desk, one chair, one phone, nothing.
Trident was about 3 stories high.
I've got a short little clip to play. It's what some of the firefighters said who came out of the building.
It was coming down from the interior on us. A lot of people don't know that. It was coming down. It was coming from the interior. It trapped us on the 3rd floor. The inside structure was just disintegrated. We're like, how is this happening when the plane was up 50 more stories and the stairwell was collapsing on us? Something wasn't right, man.
Inside of the building was disintegrating around them. Now, they weren't talking about bombs or thermite flashes or anything like that. They were just saying the place was disintegrating. Even if you think back with the plane-shaped holes, you had the waving woman Edna Sintron standing in the hole, and they said it was supposedly an inferno weakening the steel or whatever, but she was standing there holding on to the outside remnants of the outer steel core, and she wasn't burning or anything like that. So yeah, this is now a short little bit about the 16 survivors, Mickey Cross, and then the gentleman, I might be pronouncing his name incorrectly, but his name is Pasquale Buscelli. He's also referred to as the 9/11 surfer, and he was basically coming down from the 84th floor with some of his fellow co-workers. And when they hit around about the mid-40s, they met up with some firemen, and the firemen told them, okay, fine, if you get down to the 23rd floor, there's a working elevator, and you can take the elevator going down. And when they eventually hit the 23rd floor, they decided, no, they're not going to take the elevator, they'll keep going with the stairs. And when they hit the landing for the 22nd floor, all of a sudden they heard the building rumbling and shaking. The people who were with Pascal, they ended up running into the 22nd floor, and he stayed in the stairwell and just jumped up down to the next landing and curled up into a small little ball. And let's hear what he then experienced.
A 110-story building above us, and I'm looking up at the sun.
That's where he landed, on that little ledge.
Wow.
Everything above him disappeared. You tell me can bombs do that? He didn't lose his hearing, didn't go
and
blind.
A second later, I opened up my eyes, and I was just sitting there, totally numb, looking up at blue sky. Then it got dark from the smoke and everything, and I started to cough. I started to feel pain in my leg, and I said, I I couldn't even believe at that point that I was alive, and I survived that, and there was nothing above me.
Nothing above him. And for many years, he couldn't talk about it. He was, yeah. So the World Trade Center survivors, they weren't buried under 500,000 tons of collapsed building, blasted by explosives. They weren't crushed under the weight of that 500,000 tons of material, or struck by any steel beams or heavy object, burned by fire, thermite, or molten metal, cooked by intense heat of any kind, nuked or vaporized by nuclear devices buried under the buildings, or deafened by loud explosions, and blinded by bright flashes at all. So how do you explain that? Something else happened to those buildings. It's not natural the way for 90 floors above you to just disappear. And for me in South Africa, if I go to Cape Town, the biggest building that we've got is around about 30 stories high. Now imagine three of them on top of one another, and you being underneath those 90 stories, and then the next moment you just feel yourself falling through the air, and when you wake up, you basically look up and you see blue sky above you. And that is what freaked him out for many years. So the other thing that was also very strange is the artifacts that the people found in the rubble. Because there was a lack of rubble and then a lack of artifacts. So let's have a listen to what was actually found and what was not found.
When I hit play on this, I want you to go to where your mic symbol is at the very bottom of the browser, and there's a little up arrow, and make sure that your mic is connected. So you'll see, and hopefully, I think you're going through your computer and not your microphone.
It's hard to picture the 7 buildings that were lost. 7 World Trade Center was 47 floors. Building 6 had 8 floors. Buildings 5 and 4 were 9 floors each. The towers, 1 and 2, were 110 floors each, and number 3 was a 22-floor hotel. Piece by piece, those buildings have sailed on barges across the Hudson to a landfill on Staten Island. Here, the ruins are separated, sorted, and searched again. Tons of concrete roll by before there's even a hint of a life, a frequent flyer card, or the keys to the office. They've manned these lines every day, weekends, holidays, every day. And after 8 months of that, for many, there's a sense of loss at leaving.
When it's all over, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to say goodbye to this. But we will. And though this operation will end, the friendships and the bonds that will form never will.
Jim Luongo and Bruce Bovino of the NYPD and the FBI's Richard Marks run the operation.
Give me some sense of what you found over the last 7 months or so.
It's life interrupted. It's just bits and pieces of people's lives. You see all the cars that we've brought up here. As you go through and try to get the personal effects out of the cars, you find golf clubs, you find birthday presents, you find kids' toys in the car. It's just a snapshot of these people's lives that abruptly came to an end.
If you look at this, you wouldn't believe you could find anything. They're finding the most minute things, personal belongings, pieces of evidence, body parts. They're finding it all.
Is there one artifact that stands out for any particular reason for you?
I think the lack of artifacts stands out to me quite a bit. I think the fact that I haven't seen a door, I haven't seen a phone, I haven't seen a computer, I haven't seen a doorknob. I think that stands out. But for the things that we have seen, every now and then we'll come across a stuffed animal that might have been on somebody's desk, pictures that were on people's desks that we're trying to restore.
You have 2 110-story office buildings. You don't find a desk. You don't find a chair. You don't find a telephone, a computer. The biggest piece of a telephone I found was half of the keypad, and it was about this big. The building collapsed to dust.
anything I've ever seen like that. I've seen collapses and demolition buildings, but nothing like this was unbelievable. Like I said, there wasn't a door, there wasn't anything to be found. It was all disintegrated, all rubble. Concrete was small little pieces, not even slabs. No desk, no furniture, no computers, no phones, no anything. So I imagine the people were the same as the building, nothing left.
We're talking here about 43,600 windows, 600,000 square feet of glass, 200,000 tons of structural steel, 5 million square feet of gypsum, 6 acres of marble, and 425,000 cubic yards of concrete, turned in good part into a cloud, says environmental medical doctor Stephen Levin.
I was astonished at the degree to which solid materials were turned into pulverized dust.
But most interesting in the mix, they are looking, they think, at specks of steel that used to be beams and elevators, marble from the lobby floor and facings. So what were once the strongest architectural elements in the two towers were pulverized, large portions turned into clouds like this one. Still, there is this mystery. If some of the hardest materials were vaporized, how to account for the presence everywhere of paper? Fully intact letters, business forms, stationery. Paper is so fragile and combustible, and yet somehow, maybe because we have so much of it, it was everywhere.
I was standing there thinking, we got 210-story office buildings. What's in an office building? Desks, couches, chairs, computers, whatever. In the 9 days I stood there, never saw a desk, never saw a computer, never saw a couch, never saw a chair, nothing. If you wanted to survive 9/11, you had to be a piece of paper.
And there's another aspect that is really strange, is as soon as the buildings went down, and you've got it on video where a cameraman ran about a block away from the North Tower when it disintegrated. And as soon as he basically stood up and it went dark and then the sun started coming back again, you heard all these weird like alarm sounds. And that's basically the fireman locator alarms. And what happened and what the people said is the firemen disappeared, but the locator alarms were still there. And the firemen just disappeared, just like the people, just like around about close to 1,000 people till today that haven't been identified, with some of the remains that were found on some of the other buildings and so. Now, the main thing also, when you've got that the building coming down and the controlled demolition, a lot of people say, yeah, but the lack of rubble is due to everything falling into the basements. But there's an article where they basically state that most of the 7-story basement was intact. And let's say the whole basement was full of rubble. That still leaves you with an extra 6 stories that you should have above ground, and we did not see that. If you go back to that previous video where you look at what was left after the dust settled, the rubble didn't even reach as high as the lobby height, that was about 3 stories. So we can go into the next video where Dr. Wood would talk about some of the basements and the importance of the basement not being ruptured because of the bathtub.
Now let's just summarize
around the World Trade Center, because if that got ruptured, Manhattan would have flooded. So we can quickly listen to what Dr. Wood has to say about the bathtub.
Now let's just summarize the reason why you state that the towers didn't hit the ground.
Well, they didn't burn up, nor did they slam to the ground, but turned into dust in midair. And we know that because if they slammed to the ground, we'd have a pile of rubble left over. If they slammed to the ground, the seismic signal would have shown that, which it didn't. And if they slammed to the ground, they're actually built in the Hudson River, 70 feet below the water table on bedrock. And so there's this dike around them. You get 2 500,000-ton buildings and another 250,000-ton building, slam it down, you're going to bust the water retaining wall.
It wasn't ruptured. If it ruptured, you would have flooded all of lower Manhattan and the underground, the subways, and so forth. Actually, when they were cleaning up the remains, there's a little corner of Building 6 that was left in the northwest corner. They didn't want to use explosives to bring that down. They used cables to pull it down, or grapplers holding a cable to the thing and rocking it back and forth and pulling it down.
Wow.
Because they were afraid to use explosives for fear it would damage the bathtub wall. And that's just a 6-story building and a corner of a 6-story building. So you have two 110-story buildings, each 500,000 tons. And that didn't damage the bathtub was damaged, but not by the building's demise, but by the earth-moving equipment that came in, the next day.
That's right.
And the PATH trains, that's Port Authority Trans-Hudson. It goes under the Hudson River, and it comes up on bedrock underneath the World Trade Center on the bedrock there. And you would think if something mashed down on it, it would damage that tunnel.
Absolutely.
It was built, around 1909, I think is when it opened, something like that. They must have made stuff better back then.
I am standing inside of PATH Train 745, and I have to say I just stepped into here a few moments ago, and it is surreal. This train is exactly the same, intact, as it was on the day of the 9/11 attacks. They haven't done a single thing to it. As you can see here, there's even pieces of the train still on board, dust and dirt everywhere. So it really remains as it was that day on September 11, 2001.
If we go down below the ground in that corner, well, here's what it looked like. The building, indeed, the main body went missing, just like it was sliced off there. So the mall is in the first story below ground. And there's some firefighters that were walking along there. We're going to go down one story and look at them. Here they are. That's right under that area. It's a little bit punched in down here, but you can read Innovation Luggage, Hallmark Cards, so you know right where they are. So now we're going to go a couple of stories below that to the loading docks. And it's painted purple under Building 5, so you know where you are, and then green under Building 4. So it's color-coded so the delivery trucks know where to unload. And we're going to look down that direction, just after 9/11. Listen to the echo in this audio clip.
Going down to the parking garage. We're in quite deep.
These are the first pictures of search crews underneath the World Trade Center, desperately looking for survivors.
That's not a collapsed parking garage. That's not even a full parking garage. It's an empty parking garage.
Incredible.
So that's it. Okay, so the main thing also that Dr. Wood talks about is the fact that if that 500,000 tons of each building slammed down to the ground, you should have a corresponding seismic reading. And we did not have that. And the comparison she does is she uses the Seattle Kingdom that was a controlled demolition, and that registered a 2.3 on the Richter scale when they took that down. And when you talk to Richard Gage and the proponents for controlled demolition, and you ask them about the seismic readings, they get really, really, really uncomfortable because they can't give a sufficient answer for the lack of a seismic reading. If you've got a 130,000 ton Seattle Kingdom hitting the ground, leaving a 2.3 versus what was registered for the Twin Towers and in Building 6, it immediately shows you that it wasn't controlled demolitions. So we can quickly play this. This was an interaction that I had with David Chandler and Richard Gage in 2023.
All right. Next question. Measuring things. The building falling, could it be measured on the Richter scale?
Well, there were, when it fell, it created seismic waves that were picked up. I don't remember the names of the places. I never looked into that, but Ted Walter, who I was doing this paper with, has done some, and then there's some other guys who have looked at the seismic signals that they picked up from 9/11.
The second part of that question was, what seismic readings could we expect? Do you have?
I'm not a seismologist, so let's go on.
I'm not a seismologist, so let's go on.
Up above at the top, there's WTC1's impact on the ground. And what's below that, that blue data, that was an earthquake that was in Midtown Manhattan that same year. It's approximately the same magnitude. And it was a 2.4 instead of a 2.3. But you notice the signals are very, very different. Notice the high frequency of in the blue signal.
Yes.
But notice that you first get the primary wave arriving. That little, it's kind of like snout leading up to the big wave. And then the secondary wave is that bigger one. But you can't see those same signals from when the towers hit. If the towers are slamming down into the bedrock, they should be ringing like a tuning fork.
Right.
Here's the signal for the Tower 1. It lasted 8 seconds. It takes 9.5 seconds to throw a bowling ball off the roof and have it hit the ground below. The building went away faster than it could have fallen. It didn't hit the ground, didn't slam to the ground. That's why there's no S and P waves. There's only surface waves. And that's what you would get if you lifted the building off the ground. You know, think of two people sleeping together in the same bed. One person gets up, the other person, in a conventional mattress, the other person feels the disturbance.
Right.
If you lift a 500,000-ton building off the ground, it's going to cause a surface disturbance.
Right.
That's all that was recorded, not anything going boom on the bedrock. This is the King Dome. So here's a controlled demolition, and it produces a P wave and an S wave. So if we have Seattle King Dome, we're going to look at things relative to that. That made a 2.3 on the Richter scale when it was blown up by controlled demolition. And we have these two towers. Let's say for the Tower 2 was the first to go. So if we turn it to dust, all but the bottom 16 stories, and then drop a 16-story building to the ground, we record approximately the same seismic signal as what was recorded on 9/11. Just pretend this rest doesn't exist. And for Tower 2, if you turn it into dust above the 20th story and just drop a 20-story building to the ground, you get the seismic signal that was recorded. And for Building 7, it's all but the bottom 2.5 stories. Where's the rest of the building? WTC2 just went away at the top, and then WTC1, and then you have these various quarry blasts all day. And then see down here at the bottom, that was an earthquake in the Fox Islands, which is up part of the Aleutian Islands. But look at the thing just before then. That was Building 7 going away. You can't even see it on the chart. It made a 0.6 equivalency on the Richter scale, which is like a jackhammer. And it was 6 times the mass of the King Dome. No wave traveled through the earth. It was only surface waves. That doesn't happen in building demolitions. You know, you always have an S wave and a P wave at building demolitions.
That little video right there is the creepiest one of all.
Yeah.
Like that, just literally, there's some type of remaining edifice, and then it just.
That's the solid core steel core, 900 feet high, the size of the Eiffel Tower. And the guys with the controlled demolition proponents would want to tell you, no, there's dust that settled on that, and then it was taken out by more explosives, and that's just the dust
Right.
falling
They're
off
not
it. But
turning to
sorry,
dust.
that's not it.
No, it's incredible. I mean, that's just one of the things. We're at the 1 hour mark, Norman. We have another 2 hours to go. I don't have time for a 3 hour
Yeah.
show. So I think that this will be a good place to break. We can pick this up next Friday,
Yeah, no, definitely.
same time. Where can people, I'll put a link to your Substack. It's 911revision.substack.com, right?
Yeah.
And then what's your X handle?
900 at 911 Revisionist.
At 911 Revisionist. People are already kind of going after Judy Wood in the comments. She's leading away from mini nukes. And so it's still, I guess.
We will get to the mini nukes aspect. The thing is, if people just pay attention to the 16 survivors in the North Tower, if there was a nuke underneath them, why didn't they die of radiation poisoning, and why weren't they vaporized to bits? And there was no heat. They didn't suffer any burns from molten metal raining down from them. They didn't go blind from bright flashes or anything like that. Pascal Buscelli, that fell 17 stories onto that perch, he only suffered a broken ankle, and he was back home with his pregnant wife at 8 o'clock that evening. There's an interview with Mickey Cross last year, and he hasn't suffered any major health problems. You can go look for the interviews on YouTube, and that's it. It's as easy as that. The bathtub wasn't ruptured. If you want to go for the buried nukes,
Yeah, we just showed that, right? And that the
Right.
parking structure's intact.
Yeah,
But there's, I mean, the thing is there's a lot of disinformation. They were showing forges. There's things about heat from underneath there, which we haven't addressed yet.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to that. We have more time. We've got, this is only about a third of the entire presentation.
Yeah.
And again, it's Norman from South Africa, 911 Revisionist on Twitter, and 911revisionism.substack.com. And you can check that out. But we'll definitely have a part 2. So thanks so much for your time.
Cool. Thanks.
Let's do that.